All right. I am fully aware that everybody just ate lunch, so we're going to try to keep this kind of moving, quick, some good stuff. You guys are going to be doing some writing. This is a workshop. Now, I know just a couple hours ago we had an overview of what onboarding is, the benefits of it and so forth. Dominic did a wonderful, wonderful job. A lot of what he said is you'll see in my presentation. That just goes to let you know how important onboarding is. I actually think you may see another onboarding program presentation a little bit later. Onboarding is important. Onboarding is important. And so many of us in more established organizations, we already have onboarding programs, right? And when we got there, it was already there. Some of us, like myself, who are in smaller organizations, public input, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Public input is a smaller organization. We have about 35 people. And when I got to public input, there was really nothing in place. And we just ended up hiring an onboarding manager to develop an onboarding program. But I've developed an onboarding program before with these guys over here from Spreedly when I used to lead them in my previous job here. So it was really good to see them here. So they may have seen some of what they're going to see, what we're going to see up here, but I wanted to give a different kind of presentation. So you see up here it says CS alchemy. I consider myself a CS alchemist because I actually do stuff. You're going to see a lot of people who kind of talk about things theoretically. Oh, it's good to do this, it's good to do that. But how do we actually do it? How do we actually, give me some examples of how I can equate something from my job to what you do, or examples, so that I can kind of build it out and take it back to work and put it into action. And that's what I hope that you get from this presentation today. Okay? So let's see here. Let me see if I can figure out this. So, an interactive workshop to build an actionable onboarding program. So I'm going to talk about what onboarding is. We're going to talk about why it's important to look at the different steps. Again, you've seen some of these steps earlier today, but I think it's really important to review. So I don't say things profound that often, so when I actually get to, I try to quote myself, so maybe someone can use it somewhere else and it ends up in a quote book, right? So big things often have small beginnings. So the right onboarding program can have a cascading impact on the retention and growth. Designing the right onboarding program is a little bit of science, a little bit of art. No matter what your product is, no matter what type of company you are, it takes a little bit of a balance to figure out what's right for your customer. So, what is onboarding? All right? You saw something a little bit like this before. And it doesn't really matter what that arrow in the middle looks like, but it is getting from A to B. You have a new customer, and they need to be able to do something in your product at the end of an onboarding program. So think about that. A new customer has to be able to do something in your product. Some of you all that may be connected with me on LinkedIn, and I have a thing at the very end to please connect, but I talk about, I equate teaching schools with customer success a lot, because there's a lot of direct lines with what teachers do and what customer success does. I talk about this quite a bit. I've written a couple of articles about it. So when you think about onboarding, think about a teacher in the first week of a class, depending on the grade level. It could be, in the higher grades, it's usually 1 or 2 days. Lower grades, it is a longer period, like a week. What they're doing in the first week is onboarding those students to be successful for the school year. They're talking about, this is where you're going to see your assignments. This is where you turn in your assignments. This is how you ask to use the bathroom. This is where your cubby's going to be, where you put your book bag. This is where you're going to sit. This is how you're going to know you're sitting at the right desk, because your name is on the desk. That teacher is onboarding those students to be successful for that year. And that's exactly what we're doing with onboarding with our customers. We are given instruction of how to find value in what it is that you're going to do. So again, the end of onboarding, your customer should be able to do something coming out of onboarding. They may not immediately find that full value, but there should be some initial value realized. They should be able to see some successes. So back to the teaching thing, preschool in the United States, now not every country has an idea of preschool. Some go right into primary school, kindergarten, and so forth. But there's so much research out there about if a student is prepared before starting kindergarten, number of words heard and so forth, they are they have higher chances of graduating than not going to preschool. It has a lot to do with socialization, reading, words that you've heard. So it's about the foundation. Again, it's kind of repetitive, but it's about the foundation of how you set your customers up for success. Now, what onboarding is not. Now, this list can be a little bit controversial, and we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. But one is not controversial. Number one is not controversial. It's not a single event or engagement. You can't do one thing and say a customer is onboarded, even if it's a long training. I've been in onboarding programs where it's a 4-hour training. That's not effective. But that's not onboarding. At the end of an onboarding program, something should be happening. It's not troubleshooting. This is not really a time to troubleshoot what's happening in your product or the challenges they may be having. Now, that's not to say you can't answer questions, that the onboarding personnel team can't answer questions and run stuff to the product or support team or so forth. Because if your product is not working, obviously it's going to be a little bit of trouble there. But it's not really about the troubleshooting piece. Implementation, I put well maybe. All right. We had a little bit of controversy previously about onboarding versus implementation. I personally think that implementation is a part of onboarding. I think it's encapsulated within onboarding, because in order for you to be on the other side of onboarding doing something, you have to at least be able to be set up to do it. So at the end of onboarding, you should be able to do something, so implementation has to happen inside of it. But it's a separate piece, and it's not really a time to sell. I have a firm belief that in order for you to upsell anything, your customer has to find value in what they've already purchased. Before you can upsell them anything, they have to find value in what you purchased. It doesn't make sense to come into onboarding and say, oh, well, you're going to need this, this, and this. Let me connect you with a salesperson. Doesn't make sense at all. So it's not really a time to upsell or do anything else. Get them to be able to do something, and we'll talk about that something in onboarding before we start to talk about trying to get more money out of our customers. Now, just a little bit about myself. I don't like to start out with this slide because I want to get into the content and then I'll talk about myself. But just a little bit. I've been in the IT industry. I started as a developer. I've been in 24 years, actually 25 now. Started as a developer, did some different things. About 11 years in customer success. Head of customer success at Public Input. I've recently, I was an adjunct professor at UNC Charlotte. I'm from Durham. I live in Durham, North Carolina, which is central. Charlotte is kind of on the west coast. I've published a book. It's a marching band book, cinematographer. And see, people don't really believe that because I'm a technical person. So I put a picture up there of me doing Steadicam work on a film that was shot in Durham. I have three kids, Nicholas, Cameron, and Peyton. Cameron and Peyton are twins. I've been married for 16 years. I am a doctoral student. I should be finishing in the spring. Appreciate that. I took some time out from writing to come here. I was actually doing some work before lunch, researching some articles. And I've been on the school board, Durham Public Schools Board of Education for 8 years. Last night, which is the reason I couldn't come here yesterday, last night was my last board meeting. I decided not to run again. So I'm really excited about that. And plus, I'm on advisory boards. So I kind of get around. I do a lot of different things. But customer success is my passion. Even though I'm a technical person, I went a technical path, I found a home in customer success. And I think it's because there's so many moving pieces to it, like onboarding here. So, as we get into thinking about this, I want you to, so we're going to talk about the different steps of onboarding. And I'm using examples from public input of how we approach it. But what I would really like from this session is to, for you all to think about your product, your products, your suite of products, or how you approach your customers. And think about those outcomes. We're going to talk about what your goal is for different meetings and what the customer's outcome should be for those different meetings. And we're going to focus on one little piece here, but this structure, I think you can take back the work and look at what you have, your different parts of your onboarding, and say, are we really looking at the outcomes? Is this part of our onboarding program really focused on the outcomes of the customer? Or are we just checking a box? So every step of your onboarding process must be focused on customer outcomes. Everything, that's a full stop. Now there's a lot of different competing methodologies, product-led growth. We were just talking about that. Product-led growth is kind of the opposite of customer-led growth. I believe that they can live together, because in customer success we can be customer-led, while the company, the product, is going to be try to grow the product in a way that the product speaks for itself. But I think we believe differently. So as long as we focus everything on what the customer gets out of it, I don't think we can go wrong. You saw the chevrons earlier too. I swear, when I saw him presenting, when I saw Dominic presenting, I was like, did he see my presentation? Like, he even used chevrons. It's a little bit different, but hey, he's a CCO, so I give him deference. So I'm not really going to talk about the sales handoff. And the reason I'm choosing not to talk about the sales handoff is because I'm assuming that a handoff happens of some sort. Now, again, larger established organizations, you get there and those processes are already there, but a few of us who are working in smaller organizations, we actually get the opportunity to look at each piece of the process. Now, I came to public input and they kind of had some processes, if that's what you want to call them, and I ended up having to take some customers. And because we lost a CSM, and there's nothing more eye-opening than a leader doing CSM work to understand what's working and what's not in the process. And I realized we actually didn't have a sales handoff, because a new customer came in and said, I'll take the new customer, all right, when they close. A week later, someone asked, well, did you do a kickoff call for the customer? I said, I didn't know that they closed. I didn't know that they were actual customer. Like, do we have anything? So we had to create a whole process, and then the implementation. Who sets up the account? I don't know. We don't do it. We don't do it either. So that's just a little piece. If you're a leader, do some CSM work in your organization to feel the pain, because there's nothing more eye-opening than that. So we're going to talk about the things that are in purple. We're going to focus on the knowledge transfer part. I call it knowledge transfer. Some people call it the education piece. Because I think we can kind of agree with kickoff call, goal setting, review and handoff to the CSMs. I think we can agree with that kind of means. We're going to go over it. But the customized part is the knowledge transfer. What do our customers need to know to be able to do something? And we're going to kind of work through that a little bit. All right, kickoff call. So what you're going to see on the left-hand side is action steps for you, right? On the right-hand side, you're going to see what I believe customer outcomes should be. Now, what I hope is we can take some notes. I think the presentations will be available afterwards, right? You can write it down, great. If not, you can get it a little bit later. So in the kickoff call, this is a meet and greet, technical experience. How much technical experience does the contact person have, depending on your product. So there needs to be a little bit for public input. Let me take a step back. Public input is an organization who creates software for small and local governments to engage with their constituents. Our goal is to have governments or public engagement of 300 million people by 2030 come through our software. So that's surveys, newsletters, public comments, all of those sorts of things. So we create the software that allows, cities, counties, departments of education, so forth, engage with their people. And the easier we can make it, we believe that the more people who engage with government, the better government is. And that's our goal. So there's a little bit of technical need. It's a software as a service platform, but there's still integration with some of their tools. And so how much experience does our point of contact have? A lot of times we're talking with PR people from the government agencies. Details about what the customer purchased, what was in the sales cycle. I call this entitlements review. Additional services details, services and resources, if you will, what your knowledge base is, so forth. This is what it is that you're doing on the left-hand side. Where are they in their public engagement? Some are trying to figure it out. Some of their governing officials said, look, you know what? We need to hear from 2 million people in the next year. Well, we don't know how to do that, so we get SurveyMonkey, but that doesn't quite do the trick, if you will. Outcomes here is the customer makes contact with public input onboarding manager. They have their roadmap through the onboarding explained. We're talking about what is your experience going to be like? How are you going to graduate? And then the onboarding manager needs to make sure the information, the intel that they have is updated in Salesforce. We actually just moved from a product called Pipedrive, but the CRM is the same. This kickoff call, in some respects, is the first real-time public input is engaging with our customer. Same thing with yourself. Now, obviously, the sales team has engaged, but that's a different conversation. It's a different kind of person that has to be a salesperson. I'm not a salesperson. We were asked for upsells. They're saying, well, the salespeople, it's just not worth our time to do these upsells because the commission is just so low. Can the CSMs do the upsells? Like, we can CSMs identify them, but can we go through the process? I was like, you don't want a CSM negotiating price. We have too much empathy. We don't like people to feel uncomfortable. So if something costs $10,000 and they're like, oh, the customer's like, $10,000, it's going to go down to $3,000. Because we want people to feel, like, oh, well, what makes you feel better? Well, you don't want a CSM to do that. You don't want me to do it. We'll be broke. So your onboarding is really intel gathering. Your kickoff is really about intel gathering. So if you take a moment and think about, in your kickoff call, what do you expect your customer to get out of it? A lot of times a kickoff call, when we're thinking about a kickoff call, we're saying, well, this is what I need to tell the customer. I need to give them the instructions. I need to, introduce myself, maybe introduce a CSM, tell them what implementation is, give them their details. That's our kickoff call. Let's take a step back and think about, in your kickoff calls, I'm sure most people here have been in one, what does your customer get out of it? Have we thought about that? Have we thought about what our customer is receiving? Have we taken a step and saying, let me think about this from a customer's perspective? Is giving that information like that, kind of gunning through to get through the meeting, is that the best way to do it? We have to think about the outcomes of the customer in every single step, even in a kickoff call. We have to make sure that they have it. They have something, they're getting some value of it. Every step is value driven. I'm not going to ask you to write down anything. I'm not going to ask you to say anything. But, you can if you like. All right? So let's think about that. The customer outcomes for kickoff call. Goal setting. Now, some people argue that goal setting can happen in a kickoff call. This is true. The outcomes are the same, though. When we do a goal setting step, we want to do a goal setting step for customers. The customer defines what success means with public input. Let me say that again. The customer defines what success means with public input. We don't define that. Now, we may have some best practices. We may say, most of our customers do this in the first 2 weeks of using it. Most of our customers do a survey project within a month, or they do a virtual public meeting that has, text in for public comments, or call in, or, email in for public comments within a week or within a month. But that may not be what our customers value. That may not be what it is. So what we try to do is we try to draw out, what does it mean for you? You define what it means, and let's design a program around what you need to do. So the customer outcomes here, the clear understanding of what public input products will do for them. Their business goals with our products are clearly outlined, so we can go forward with a better understanding of the value their initial success in public input means to them. Now, sometimes this gets a little uncomfortable because there's a lot of silence. It's really uncomfortable. I'm not one of the kind of people who have to, fill in the blanks with or clearing your throat. Silence is okay. And there's a lot of that. But it's important for the customer's outcomes for them to define that. Does anybody here have a separate goal setting meeting in the onboarding process? You raise your hand, it's okay. So I got to get you to move your hand or something like that, because you guys are going to fall asleep and, go back to some elementary school techniques here, see if we can get people going. Just a side question. Since you guys have been adults, has anybody done if you can hear my voice, clap once? If you can hear my clap 2 times? If you can hear 3 times? It's amazing how well that works with adults. It works with kids, but I was at an event, and they did that every time they wanted to get people's attention, and it worked so great because everybody was clapping. It was amazing there. We may have to do that here. But yeah, does anybody have a separate goal setting meeting in their onboarding process, right? Who all does the goal set? What were you saying?
That's separate from what? Sorry,
I mean, separate from the kickoff call.
Gotcha.
So like a kickoff call, then at some point having a goal setting call. Does anybody do goal setting in the kickoff call? Okay. Yeah. I think we combine that, yeah? Good. Okay. Now, for those of you that had the goal setting in the kickoff call, is that a longer call? Do you guys hold to a longer call? And do you have, is the goal setting kind of encapsulated, or is it all just kind of one? So like, do you have a kickoff call where you're talking about, the resources that you have available, how to submit tickets, how your account is set up, everything like that? And then you go into goal setting? Is it all in one? Yeah.
So I would say you take what they bought for in sales and you put it on slides to say, is this what you bought for?
Okay.
Is there anything we missed? And you show them your value framework to say, here's the other stuff we could do. Is anything here interesting to you? And that shortens it so it doesn't have to be longer.
Right.
It just shows that continuity from sales, and you make sure we're all on the same page from the start.
Okay. So they kind of do it as, I kind of described that as a entitlements review a little bit ago, where you look at the contract, what did you buy, does this work for you, and this is how you can.
But it's the why. It's not
The why.
what.
Okay.
It's like you bought this to accomplish this improvement,
Right.
that for your business.
Okay, do you get that information from, do you have that information from sales?
Correct, yes.
Okay, about why, the why.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. I need to get some of your salespeople. Clearly. One of the things, that's really good. Thank you for that. Thank you for explaining that. Thank you for explaining that, because a lot of my experience, I've had the salespeople don't necessarily gather the qualitative part of why a customer needs your product. The richness, the understanding behind it. And every once in a while they do. And when I have to ask that question again to a customer, sometimes it gets frustrating to the customer. Like, I already explained this. You should already know this. And so the reason I've set aside a different goal setting is because although sales has gotten some qualitative data before about why, the why, if I change it around to a separate meeting to say, all right, now prepare you. Now you have homework in between. Say, look, we're going to be talking about, connecting what you're going to be learning in onboarding to your goals, your personal goals. Do you want to be promoted? Your organizational goals, your governing body goals. Again, we have because it's government officials, government agencies. But that's that entire thing is really about what the customer needs to get out of it. Okay? And so if you can learn from your sales team, great. But I still think it's really important to really take a step back, even in the kickoff call, to talk about your goals. Let's list this out, because at the end of onboarding, or at least not necessarily onboarding, but handing that to the CSM, so when they're having those reviews, when they're having those engagements, we're saying, how are we going towards these actual goals that you talked about in onboarding? Let's list these out. That is a really important piece here that a lot of CSMs don't get initially. So if we can establish that in our onboarding program, that'll be great. So let's, again, outcomes, what's important to the customer. Let them define that. Let's not think about our goal setting as we're telling them what they need to achieve or what they can achieve. Let's see what they want to achieve in entitled lines. Now I'm skipping over to review and handoff. And I'm just going to touch on this just for a little bit, because I said we're going to focus on knowledge transfer. So My slides aren't out of order. I just did it like that so we can go back to knowledge transfer so we can move on. So your handoff. When you hand off to your CSM, it should be a flood of information that you gathered from your onboarding. There's a lot of stuff to do internally. But what does that mean for the customers? What are the outcomes for your handoff? You don't really, so just by the name itself, review and handoff, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's something in it for the customers. Doesn't automatically mean that. So let's think about what it means for your customers when you hand them off from onboarding, when they graduate from onboarding into CSM, managed care, or managed relationship. They've gone through an onboarding process, meaning they're able to do something after this process. For us, and I think we'll see it in a little bit, onboarding means you're able to do a survey. Now, our product isn't as easy to use as a Survey Monkey, but it's more powerful. So you're able to do something. You're able to do that. Customers can navigate public input documents, website, documentation, website, help desk. They know where everything is. Customers have had their first value realization with the product. Now, Dominic made a really good point. That first value isn't the total value, but it's the first step for them to have that total value. If they're able to do something that they've defined as a goal, this is a start of being that. So what is that? There's a start for them finding value. So what does that mean in your product? Right? What does value mean? So obviously total value, everything's great. They're going to be renewing down the road, whatever that may mean. But what does that mean for the first step? Do we break down value into different steps? Do we break down initial value versus, I've heard first value, I've heard time to value, all of that sort of thing. But maybe value needs to be, for the customer's sake, at least coming out of onboarding, it should be something, one thing that they can do that they're confident in your product. If it's Spreedly, it is doing transactions, right? If it is Plan Hat, it is developing a success plan, right? Or you guys do success plans, right?
It's a customer success platform.
Yep, that's right. Catalyst, creating some automations or some segments, right? Those are the basic pieces of it. That doesn't mean that's all they're going to do. They're not going to just do that one thing and stop, but it gives them that motivation to go forward. Customers had contact with the company and felt reassurances of the connection with public input. That kind of goes to it not being one event. You're speaking to somebody. Somebody's helping you along. You're moving along. Customer has had goals confirmed, connected with product offerings. And the customer has had more hands-on experience in the company so that meaningful business relationships have established. Think about those outcomes. Think about what that means for your product. What does that mean for your product? The customer has had contact with the company and felt reassurances. The connection. Do they feel connected? Does your digital onboarding make them feel connected in any way? It should. Technically speaking, a digital onboarding program should have the same effect as a human-led onboarding. You should still feel connected. You should still feel you should be able to reach out. So even in the handoff, there needs to be outcomes defined and confirmed with the customer. Start with the outcomes. And then you figure out how you do it. And then knowledge transfer. This is where we're going to actually do some writing. But I wanted to go through this because it's important, again, it's important to use this as a template possibly, to either review what your onboarding program is or create at least an initial onboarding program. So let's look at the outcomes. The customer has their environment ready for users to create projects. The customer has their first successful publish of survey or meeting, right? The customer achieves the start of their goals with the public input product, the start of their goals. Now, here, when we're doing this training, we're going to talk about that in a second. Maybe there's a need for an extra call or someone to come, maybe they get stuck. This is where you're actually teaching. This is where you're actually learning. So that this review and handoff, when the onboarding manager says, all right, show me your project. Show me what you created. Show me what you learned before I hand you off to the CSM. This is where that happens. So what does that mean for us on the left-hand side? Well, actually, there's no really part for us. I apologize. So this is what they're doing for this part. They're registered for training. We have admin and we have admin general. We're actually changing that to admins to users. Everybody was an admin and it was a rec. It's been a rec, so it's hard to tell. So regular training, which is instructor-led, and one-on-one admin coaching. That's the real admin coaching. Goals for the customers during this step are to set up their public input environment configured. You can set it up and then there's configuration, add users, and complete one sample project. So earlier I said, customers define what success is. Some of our customers come in and say, we don't have a project coming up, but we really like your tool. We want to use it. Well, we develop some sample projects. Say, here's 10 projects. Which one do you want to use? Configure your project. Configure it, your survey, add the images, add skip logic, add all of this kind of thing. You go through this training, we'll talk about the training, and then if you need help, we're right here to help you go through it. So we allow them to pick their priorities. We allow them to choose what their priorities are, their goal, what project they want to go through, so that they have a user-defined goal. They have a customer-defined goal. All right, so what does it mean to do something in your project, your product? I kind of asked that earlier. I forgot this slide was in here. What does that mean? Whatever product you have. What does it mean? Anybody want to give an example? What is the basic something that someone can do in your project, in your product? Log in, that's a good one. Okay, but that's not really value, right? You just log in, right? No, that's something though, that's right. Do something. What is the, search, okay, yeah. That's a good one. Search to get some results back, right? So that means, I'm guessing what you're thinking about is a product that catalogs something, right? They have to configure what they're going to catalog, and then they're able to search a term and it kind of gives results. That means it's configured correctly, that kind of, okay, good. Anyone else?
Create a database. Create a database,
yes. That can be connected to. That can be tested. The link can be tested. You can run a query on it. Something super basic to make sure that it actually works. MongoDB. Anyone else? Send information. So that means there's some process that has to be configured to grab information, right? And then send the correct information out, right? So there's some configuration there, right? If it's FTP, if it's email, it has to be some sort of query to gather that information that has to be configured, right? So they have to be able to do something. They have to be able to send information. So if we have those basics, and this is where a little bit more the interactive part comes in. If we have those basics, let's think about those basics. Let's think about 3 very basic things that a customer, the 3 basic things a customer can do in your product that should be able to do after onboarding. Let's think about that just for a second. I'm gonna ask you to write it down, write them down. 3. Now, obviously, there can be more than 3 when you get back home. But 3 is a really good number to start with. 4 sometimes can be too many for a customer to try to achieve. 2 is not enough. 2 is not enough. 2 basic things is not enough for a customer to feel comfortable in doing things in your product. 3 things feels more complete. There's psychology behind that. I didn't realize it, but there's psychology around how many things we're able to. There's just like 7 numbers, right? We're able to remember 7 numbers best. I heard that's why phone numbers started out with 7 numbers, but now we got to do area codes and country codes and all that kind of thing. 3 outcomes, basic outcomes. Meaning, when I say something, I mean something that shows some sort of value, like something accomplished. You're able to publish something, send some information, do some sort of search, set up a database. What are 3 things? All right? All right. So, these 3 things. Here, this is what we have for public input. Admin tasks, add users. Set up a basic survey, create basic reports. Those are the things that we hear most from our customers. We want to do those 3 things. Okay? Those 3 things. From those 3 things, we need to talk about what 3 things can we do for each one to help them accomplish that in our onboarding program. What 3 things, what 3 videos, 3 exercises, whatever it may be. It may be 1 video, 1 instructor-led class, and then 1 project, like sample project, to help them do, or knowledge-based article, or something like that. What can we do to help them to do, 3 items can we do to help them to accomplish that 1 thing? So I know it's a lot of words, but I couldn't display it any differently, right? So this is what it should look like. So look at the add users, account setup, trainer-led, admin-specific, trainer-led, admin-specific training, that's trainer-led. Everyday admin tools is a video, okay? For basic survey, project setup overview, knowledge base. Types of survey questions, it's a video. We have a lot of survey questions. I didn't realize that until I started working here. And then sample project workbook. Then for creating basic reporting overview, knowledge base. Admin specific reporting. My apologies for the misspelling on that reporting. Just trainer led. And equity mapping and reporting. It's a video. If I can get them to do those 3 things, I feel like they can accomplish this. This is our knowledge transfer part. This is the knowledge piece. And it looks like this no matter how many basic services that we have. We should have at least 3. I say 3 is enough. Should be. And it should be enough weight to have them take time to actually go through it. Training, videos, whatever it may be. So if you were to write this down and identify what needs to happen to make the basic reports happen, to get to the basic reports, the next step is to say, what do I have and what don't I have at work right now? And how do I create it? So the red stars are the I don't have it yet. This is actually true right here. I don't have the red stars, but I do have the green stars. Let's get that done. That's our next step. That's our next project to get our customers in the onboarding program and training, to get them to what they need. So when you create this 3x3, now you have a plan to creating your full onboarding program. So it's really quickly, next steps. If you were able to write those 3 things down, then maybe the 3 things to create your basics, you have some time to make sure those actually happen based on the outcomes for your customers. Create your missing content, baseline your metrics, get Dominic's presentation, great metrics in the pyramid. Measure your success, same thing, and then do it all over again. Is this working? Is this the base information that our customers need to be successful? Let's measure that. It has to be iterative. Your product changes, so your onboarding has to change as well. So the end changes, the beginning has to change. You can't forget that. So, thank you all for coming and listening. I hope you're able to take some of this back and review what your onboarding program is. I hope you're able to write 3 things down and how we can make it happen, how you can make it happen. At least you have a structure to start. I think I hope this has created a structure that you'll be able to use back at work and moving forward. Thank you.
Great job, Bill.
Thanks, man.
So one quick question that I had, sorry, I'm not gonna let you go. So one quick question that I had, how did you identify the first time value realization for some of your customers? Could you just kind of walk me through the process there?
Well, so by the time I got there, our customers we'd had a bunch of customers obviously kind of going through, and we were able to recognize what did success mean for certain types of customers. And so that meant identifying an initial project. So if we can get a customer to identify something that they have in mind for public input, if they could just identify that and we can lead them to that initially, we know to a very, very close to a fact that it's going to provide that value moving forward as long as they define what their success is. And that just comes from iterating, continuing to try what works, what didn't, and we identified that one piece of their identifying their outcomes, what they need.
Got it. Was that more so through just like customer interviews? Or
yeah, that's interviews, that's engagement and churn studies. Understanding, going back and understanding why customers have left and why the failure to launches, why they didn't actually, why public input didn't create value for them. And most of the time, it came from not having an initial project in mind. That's why we came with the sample projects. But then also the not being able to tie it to their everyday life. If they don't have a project in mind and they don't have a project to do initially, they're not going to use the product moving forward.
Makes sense. Appreciate that.
All right.
One more round of applause for Mike.
Thank you all.